Morning, everyone. Welcome to another episode of Trading Bitcoin with your host, Tone Vase. I am joined by Dominic Frisby. We met for the first time.
Yesterday.
Yeah,
Day before yesterday.
Day before yesterday here at the Transylvania conference in Cluj. And you're fine.
Well, I've made a mess. Go on, do you carry on talking? I'll sort it out.
No, it'll still work.
Yeah, no, I'm just going to put this thing on the top.
And so we were here speaking at the conference, and now we happen to be on the same flight from Romania to London. And here we are at the airport. We got about 20, 30 minutes before our flight takes off. So thought I'd bring you a quick stream. And Dominic, so I remember you from the old Max Kaiser shows. We're talking like 5, 6 years ago.
Yeah, probably even more, yeah.
Yeah, and first time meeting you in person, and it's been really great. So, and I remember the one memorable thing that you said back on the Max Kaiser show back then was when you were looking at Bitcoin, it was worth $1, and you thought it was pegged to the dollar, so you never got in.
No, that's not quite true. I never thought it was pegged to the dollar for a second, but I remember when I first found out about it was December 2010. I was subscribed to this newsletter about how to sort of live abroad outside of the tax system.
December 2010 is when the news broke of WikiLeaks and Assange.
No, that was later. This was way before then. When Bitcoin was being used to fund WikiLeaks?
Not fund, but when the news broke that they started funding WikiLeaks 6 months later, but that's when the news broke that they should start.
Well, there'd been an article in of all places, PC World, which is like a shop, a sort of tacky shop for computers here in the UK. But there was an article about this new money system, and it got shared with this newsletter and sent to me. But at the time, I think it was 6 cents or something like that. And I looked at
Sounds about right.
And I looked at it and I was like, oh, that sounds cool. But never got round to doing anything about it. And, I was very, very interested in money reform at the time. I wrote a film called Four Horsemen with a guy called Ross Ashcroft, which was a sort of big internet sensation film. And I was writing a book at the time called Life After State, and I was heavily into gold. And so I thought changing the money system was going to save the world. I thought, well, that sounds good, but I never invested. And then people started emailing me after that, going, have you looked at this new thing? Have you looked at this new thing? And I think it was about March of that year, I looked at it, and it was like $1. And I was like, I'm not buying that. It was 6 cents in.
That's the book, right?
Yeah, that's the book there.
All right, let's do screen share. I want to show this to the audience.
Look at the film. The film I wrote was very popular, called Four Horsemen.
Yep, let me just go to screen share so people know how to follow you. And Here we are. So we have here's Dominic Frisby's Twitter account, and the link is in the YouTube description. I will add the following. This is, you are also a comedian and a songwriter, and so this is a show you have coming up in London, right?
In London, yeah.
In London. October 31st to the 2nd of November.
Yeah, we're doing a run in the West End. It's going to be fun.
I will actually be in Greece during that time, and then I'm headed to Portugal. And
I'll live stream it to you.
Yeah, I'll try to catch that. And Life After State, here's one of your books. And then I guess if we click on your name, we will find more stuff. So you wrote a Bitcoin book, Bitcoin, The Future of Money. And you wrote that, I guess, so long ago, most people didn't know it existed.
Well, it was the first book on Bitcoin from a recognized publisher, but it never got an international distribution, unfortunately. It came out during the first crypto winter, and so people had kind of lost interest. And it probably would have been better if I timed it like a year later when people got back interested in it again.
Yeah, because Saifedean's book really took off, and there were some people at the conference that were saying that Saifedean's book is very, very similar to your book. And unfortunately, I didn't actually. I was already around in 2014, but I was just learning about Bitcoin online. I didn't really go for any books, but yeah, I gotta check that out. I have like a giant collection of signed Bitcoin books, at home. So next time I see you, I'm gonna have to bring my book and get it signed.
Saifedean's books become the Bible.
Saifedean's right there. So these are like, I guess, the other people that wrote books
on similar subjects. Yeah.
Yeah. I don't know why James Rickards is on this list. But
he really likes Bitcoin.
Yeah, so that's your book. So go ahead, you guys check it out. It was predates Saifedean's book by a good 3 to 4 years.
Yeah,
And it also talks about Bitcoin as the future of money.
Yeah.
All right, very cool. So tell us about what you're doing in the space now, and talk a little more about your presentation that you gave, which I thought was very interesting, about the dynamics,
future of work, tax,
the
and money.
future of work. Yeah, the future of.
Yeah, well, in terms of my kind of work on the space, I carry on writing, and I've just written a new book called, like, one of the reasons I wrote Four Horsemen and Life After the State and Bitcoin, the Future of Money, is I was convinced if we're going to, you know, change the world and solve the world's problems, the first thing that needs to change is our system of money, because everything starts with money. And, you know, Bitcoin has since been invented, and it's slowly starting to change and evolve. And the next big, like, if you think of zombie films, there's always a zero patient where it all starts, where the virus starts. And my next theory is that the next thing that needs to change is our system of taxes, because it's very unequal and we're taxed very highly. So I did an Edinburgh show at the Edinburgh Festival, the Edinburgh Arts Festival, Edinburgh Comedy Festival. It's called the Fringe Festival in 2016, called Let's Talk About Tax. And I started reading and studying the history of tax, and that has now evolved into another book that's coming out next week, called Daylight Robbery. And we get the expression daylight robbery, by the way, it's thought that we get that from the window tax, which existed back in the day when people blocked up their windows to avoid paying this tax. And if they had to pay a tax on, effectively by having a window, they were being taxed on daylight, and that's where they get the expression daylight robbery. Hence why I've called the book that.
That's interesting. I didn't know that.
Yeah, thank you. And but if you look at history, there has never been a civilization without taxation. And, you know, some civilizations have very low levels of tax and they tend to do very well, and other civilizations have had very high level of tax.
No, and I agree. And it's funny, like Liberland, the new country that's trying to build, I remember watching a presentation, even they were talking about putting in a tax. Like, you just can't get away from it. It needs to be minimized, but like, I don't know how to get away from it. It's
inevitable. And, but I mean, in ancient Greece, for example, they had voluntary taxes, which is quite interesting. So it was in Athens, it was considered that the rich of the city should shoulder more than their share of the burden. But if, say, the city needed a new bridge or a new road or a new warship to protect its trading, its shipping lanes, or, you know, it needed a games or an arts festival or something, then it was, you know, there'd be some rich dude in the city who would be expected to pay for it. But here's the beautiful thing. He was also expected to carry out the work in question himself. So his taxes wouldn't be given to some bureaucrat to spend on his behalf. And because he was, you know, his reputation would be on the line, and the better the games was, or the better the bridge was, the more acclaim he would receive and the better his reputation would be. He would ensure that it was carried out to the highest possible standard.
Seems like a reasonable system.
It's a very good system. But unfortunately, that died with the Peloponnesian War. It's usually wars that change tax systems.
Since you're facing me, I want to put that on this side.
Okay, sure. And so I've become very interested in tax, and we have a tax system at the moment where those who workers, laborers, are taxed very heavily by income tax. Income tax accounts for something like 50% of government revenue worldwide, whereas asset owners aren't taxed. And at the same time, not only are workers taxed very heavily, the money they receive for the work they do tends to lose its purchasing power very quickly, whereas the asset owner goes largely untaxed, and his asset tends to rise in price as money is debased. So he wins on both sides of the trade. So this is something that badly needs sorting out. But if you look at the nature of work, the traditional job where most people, you know, you work for one guy for 10, 15, 20 years, often your entire life, that's 20th century, that's history. Now there are more and more freelancers. And Ernst & Young have estimated that the contingent workforce, this is people with 2 or 3 jobs, 2 or 3 income streams, like that's everyone, that's you are Mr. Freelancer, I'm Mr. Freelancer. That's going to be, like the Bitcoin community is full of them, that's going to make up half of the global workforce by 2030. So that's, you know, 11 years from now. Half of the world's workforce will be contingent in some way. Freelancers, multiple income streams. And this is how the economy is going to deal with things like the rise of robots and all these things that are going to affect labor. But income tax has been a beautiful thing for governments because they've been able to deduct the money at source. before the worker is actually paid. So it's been very easy for governments to collect, but it's much harder to collect income from contingent workers because you have to collect the tax after the event. A lot of contingent workers at the bottom of the gig economy don't even know they have to file tax returns. There's much more evasion. And then a lot of contingent workers will become what you are, a digital nomad, in that they won't necessarily be resident in any one country. A lot of, like, let's say you're hired to do a job in Japan, you complete the job while you're in Thailand, and then you receive the money for the job when you're in Brazil. You know, who are you paying tax to? So it's not entirely black and white. I'll just let the gentleman finish with the announcement.
No, that's okay. You can keep talking.
Yeah. Okay. So as we know, governments currently spend way more than they earn. They're running huge deficits the world over. So already tax is not enough to account for spending. And, you know, Donald Trump's making lots of macho noises about, I'm going to build this infrastructure and spend this money. And that's what politicians say in order to get elected. We've just got a new prime minister in the UK, Boris Johnson, who's also made lots of noises about all the money he's going to spend. But what you're going to see is government obligations are going to be rising, just as it's going to become that much harder to collect tax. And this is going to be a very interesting dynamic in the years ahead. It's a big problem. So that the nature of work is changing, and as a result, the nature of tax will have to change, and as a result, the nature of government will have to change. And I think that's an interesting dynamic.
Yeah, no, and I agree with that as well. And I've been talking about these things quite often, that more and more jobs are going to be remote, and robots will take over the manual jobs. And the biggest casualty will be the transportation industry. It's the biggest employer around the world.
Of American workers in 4% of American workers work in the transportation industry.
That's actually pretty small compared to other nations. I mean, there's countries where it's like 10 to 15%.
I doubt it's
of the workers for transportation.
But but I mean, if 4% of the workforce have their job taken away, that's still a very big number. Yeah. That's a lot of disruption.
I thought it was significantly higher than that, but it is the #1 employer across the world, in almost every country.
Yeah,
in almost every country, and probably in America as well.
Well, America, all those big trucks, long distance trucking is big.
Yeah, my uncle is a long distance trucker, but he's in his 60s now, so he'll be,
he's getting out at the right time.
Yeah, he's going to be getting out at the right time, exactly. And going back on the taxes issue, like the only thing that I would like to see, like right now, I'm not expecting giant tax reform, but in today's digital society, I just don't understand why no one has suggested a system, even locally, like a small city or town, where yes, they're making you pay a tax, but then you log on to a website and you choose, like the way you allocate your 401k.
Yeah.
You choose where your taxes are going to go. If you want them to go to the defense of the town, they go there. If you want them to go to the firemen, they go there. If you want them to go to build the schools, they go there. You choose where your tax money goes. You still have a bureaucrat in between that, allocates that money, but at least you have some say.
Yeah.
And
that would be fantastic. It's very hard to administer at a national level, that. And the problem is everyone would you choose the wrong things.
Right.
That's why they don't do it. Nobody would choose the military.
But even at the national, and that should tell them something, right? Yeah. So even at the national level, they don't have to do that with 100%. They can say 50% of the federal taxes that you pay, you get to allocate on a pie chart as to how much percentage goes. And if you don't allocate, then we choose on your 100% of your income. But you can delegate up to 50% of your tax revenue as to where you want your money to go.
They should do that. I agree. It's not something I thought of, but
the Bitcoin blockchain can keep a very good accounting.
Yeah, sure it can.
As to if the money is actually going where you expect it to go.
the blockchain should be used actually in the allocation of taxes. It's a great idea. The idea is it's total hocus pocus in my view, but the idea is that you elect these incredibly intelligent politicians, and they know better than you. Yeah. And they will choose where to allocate your taxes, and their allocation is justified on the fact that they won your vote. And therein lies the flaws, one of the many flaws of democracy. But yeah, it's a great idea. It's quite interesting. It would work better at a local level. And one of the dynamics that we've seen in taxation in the last 100 years or so is that in the turn of the century, at the turn of the 20th century, something like 50% of taxes were collected locally and 50% collected at the national, or what you call the federal level. And that dynamic has changed, so that now way more taxes are collected federally and way fewer are collected locally. And collecting taxes at the federal level from the point of view of the leader is very good, because it's much more harder for the taxpayer to hold the tax spender to account at the federal level. Whereas at the local level, he can go to his local politician, look, you didn't build that building, or you didn't do this thing that you said you were going to do.
Good point.
And in fact, when they've tried to raise taxes at the local level, often people just don't pay, and it causes way more bigger problems. But whereas when taxes are collected at source, in other words, before your employer pays you, at the federal level, it's very different. Well, you have the socialist
also at the local level, they have to justify to you personally why your taxes are going up, which they don't have to do at the national level.
Exactly. And
they can just say income inequality, you know.
And if you
that's a reason.
And in Scandinavia is always held up as the great example of where socialism can work. You know, it's very high tax nations, and they're very good countries.
Give it a little more time, we'll see.
Well, exactly. But there, even though they have high levels of taxes, more taxes are collected at the local level than they are in the UK and the US. And that's one of the reasons why, on a relative basis, their services function better.
And we had an epic panel at the end of the conference last night, and I didn't.
It was good, wasn't it?
It was great. I didn't tweet it out. I gotta find that video. I gotta find the timestamp in that video. I didn't expect it to be like that great, but it was.
Nor did I. It got better as it went on. As we took control.
Was that you that said if you want income inequality, you should just go move to North Korea? Was that you that said?
Yeah.
I'm sorry, not income inequality. So if you want income equality, just go move to North Korea. Everyone there has the same income.
Yeah. That's one of the great things. Is the great argument is there's too much economic inequality. The rich have got too much relative to what the poor have. And like I say, if you want equality of income, I don't know, but I imagine North Korea has the most equal income in the world. The point is to have everyone operating on a higher base. I look at Bitcoin, and you look at the distribution of wealth. In other words, who owns the coins, and it's even more unequally distributed than something like land, or you read statistics about what a CEO in America earns.
I question the Bitcoin statistics on the Bitcoin wealth inequality. There is lots of statistical garbage there that people like to point out, but let's assume that Bitcoin's income inequality, or not Bitcoin's income inequality,
the wealth distribution,
Bitcoin's holding inequality is the worse than any other country in the world. Why is this still a good thing and the best equalizer for the world?
Well, there's two reasons there. Let's say Satoshi Nakamoto is the king, okay? And he kind of is the king of Bitcoin. And he has, is it 1.2, 1.3 million Bitcoins installed? Something like
I think that number seems to go up. 5 years ago, people were saying 500,000. Now it's 1 million. Okay. Now you're saying 1.3.
I thought
this number it just keeps growing and growing and growing.
Okay, but just for the sake of argument, let's say it's 1 million. And how many Bitcoins are there in the world at the moment? 18 million. So Satoshi Nakamoto has 1/18 of all the value there is in Bitcoin. Now, I don't think there's one person in the entire world that has 1/18 of global wealth. So already right there, you've got a huge income, wealth, badly distributed wealth. But every single person who bought Bitcoin in its evolution, apart from the few people who bought Bitcoin in the months when it was higher than it is today.
Over 10,000,
but that was like 1 month or 2 months.
It wasn't much time.
So every single person who's got into Bitcoin, particularly the earlier adopters, is, even if they've only got the tiniest piece of the Bitcoin pie, is considerably wealthier than they were before they got into Bitcoin. And so even though Bitcoin itself is unequally distributed, the value of everyone's wealth who's involved in Bitcoin has gone up, and that is surely a good thing. And the other beautiful thing about Bitcoin is if we were to go into a world in which people were paid in sound money that appreciates in value, and sound money whose supplies finite, as opposed to fiat money, then you'd see workers, instead of being heavily taxed and then receiving their income in money that loses its value, and then the salary increases they get never match the depreciating value of fiat money. If instead they were to be paid in sound money that appreciates in value, then that changes the whole dynamic of the labor force. So suddenly it's a great equalizer for laborers.
Excellent. I would love to keep chatting with you, but our flight is literally...
Is it boarding?
It should be, because the flight is in like 30 minutes and there's a bus that will take us to the plane. And I do have to do like a little bit of trading analysis, and you do trading yourself. And
let me just do your analysis and I'll just look over and I
saw your presentation, and you like to use moving averages on weekly charts, which is very similar to Tyler Jenks's preaching of Consensio. Dominic is not familiar with Tyler's work, but I will make sure that I will. That's probably our flight. So here's our weekly chart. You can see the moving averages that I use are 7 and 30. I know you talked about using 6 and 21.
Yeah, or 21 and 9, yeah.
Or 21 and 9.
Similar effect. Yours is slightly longer term.
A little bit longer term on a weekly scale. You can see my cross is coming in 2 weeks.
That's a bearish cross.
So the moving averages that I have on this trading view is that it shows me if the price doesn't change for the next 3 candles, where is it going?
Okay, that's
very useful. So I can look ahead.
Yeah.
So here's the 200 week, and here's where it will be if the price doesn't change. So the weekly candle is still below the 30-week moving average. That is not a good sign. It is a bullish candle. So my weekly chart is neutral to slightly bearish. My daily chart is bearish. We got rejected by the 200-day moving average from the bottom. Yes, it's still rising. The 50 period is falling, and the 128-day moving average, which has been historically very accurate for Bitcoin. You may want to take a look at the 128 on the daily. And
it's funny, I never liked the 200-day moving average as a rule, but I found it works quite well with Bitcoin. When you use it on the S&P and stuff, I just think it was useless.
I gotta retake a look at that. I do have the S&P chart, and I've been bullish the S&P, but it's the weekend, so it doesn't really change anything from my last video. We have a red one on sequential. I don't think Dominic's familiar with sequential, but I'm happy to send him one of my videos. And if tomorrow's candle starts trading below these swing lows, I become a bear in Bitcoin once again. Right now, we are neutral to slightly bearish, but maybe a little more than slightly. But I would be fully bearish if tomorrow's candle starts trading down.
Yeah, I think it's that looking at that chart that makes me feel very bearish, but it's because you draw those 2 down arrows. So
that helps. But also, I'm a big fan of triangles and chart patterns. And this triangle, I was talking about it for over a month, and the triangle broke down. And the ultimate target of that triangle is $5,000.
Yeah, I get that.
We may or may not get that target, but right now I am still bearish.
Bitcoin did a very similar triangle last year with the low of the triangle at 5,800,
and when it broke right here,
and when it broke down,
everyone made fun of me. I was pointing to a $3,000 bottom on I went short here big time at 6,000. Everyone called me an idiot that Bitcoin has bottomed at 6,000, and then the bottom broke, and we went down.
And because there's so many stops.
No, I will say I was still looking for lower lows, which we didn't get, but I'm still nervous that we could. All right, guys, we got to go catch our flight. Otherwise, this becomes an 8-hour video. Thank you all so much for watching. You can also check out my website and my upcoming travel schedule right here. So I was just going to show Dominic how I did it on my website real quick. Here's my website, tonebase.com. Come on, load.
So that your computer reads what's on your screen. So that what's on your screen now comes up.
Yeah. So what people are watching is actually this. That's us in the beginning, and this is what's happening right now.
Cool.
You guys can see my conferences by going to the public calendar, and you will see that I am headed to London for CC Forum right here. You can go ahead and click on it. You can click on the conference, and you can see where I'm speaking and when I'm speaking. On my panel, Roger Ver has just been replaced by Craig Wright. I haven't had time to process the information yet, but I'll think about it during the flight. Nouriel Rubini is also on the panel. All right, guys.
That is going to be epic.
Thank you all so much for watching, and I'll see you all on the next one. Bye, guys.